The voicemail lit up my phone at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning. Jennifer Chen, the real estate agent who'd helped process the paperwork 3 days ago. Her voice had an edge I hadn't heard during our appointment. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Jennifer from Prestige Realty. I need to speak with you as soon as possible. It's about the documents you signed on Friday. Please don't. Just call me back immediately. Don't discuss this with anyone yet. It's important." I stared at the phone, that familiar weight settling in my chest. The same feeling I'd had when the hospital called about Margaret. When you reach 68, you learn that urgent calls rarely bring good news. I was standing in the kitchen of the house Margaret and I had built 32 years ago. Literally built. We'd chosen every tile, every fixture, watched it rise from bare land in what was then the outskirts of Portland. Now the city had grown around us, and our modest investment had become a $2 million property in the Pearl District. Not that the money mattered. This was Margaret's kitchen, her garden visible through those windows, her choice of that ridiculous chandelier I'd argued against and now couldn't imagine removing. I called Jennifer back. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for calling. She paused. I heard papers shuffling. "I need to see you today. Can you come to my office? Alone? What's this about? The transfer went through clean. You said so yourself." "Please, Mr. Reynolds. I found something in the documentation after you left. Something that doesn't sit right with me. I've been doing this for 23 years, and I know when something's wrong. Can you come in at 2 o'clock? I agreed because the alternative was spending the day wondering. The signing on Friday had seemed straightforward. My sons, David and Michael, had been talking about it for months. Estate planning, they called it. Avoiding probate. Making things easier when the time came. David's the oldest at 40, works in finance. Always wears those expensive suits that Margaret used to say made him look like a politician. Michael's 38, tech industry, divorced, living in that condo downtown he could barely afford. They'd both been so helpful after Margaret died 18 months ago, coming by for dinners, helping with paperwork, including me in their lives. David would bring his wife Christine for Sunday dinners. Michael would call every few days just to check in. After 2 years of watching Margaret fade, after being alone in this big house, their attention felt like a lifeline. "Dad, we're worried about you managing all this," David had said over one of those dinners. "The house, the property taxes, the maintenance. What if something happens to you? We want to make sure everything's protected." It made sense. I was getting older. The house was worth a fortune. They suggested transferring the deed to their names while I retained lifetime tenancy. Their lawyer friend had drawn up the papers. "You'll live here as long as you want, Dad. We just want to make sure everything's in order. No one can contest it. No probate mess." I'd signed because I trusted them. Because they're my sons. Because after Margaret died, they were all I had left. Jennifer's office was in one of those new glass buildings downtown. She met me in the lobby, and I noticed immediately that her friendly demeanor from Friday was gone. She looked tired, worried. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Reynolds. Let's talk in the conference room." She spread out copies of the documents I'd signed, color-coded tabs everywhere, a legal pad filled with notes. "I almost didn't call you," she started. "I told myself it wasn't my business, but I have a father your age, and I kept thinking, if someone knew something that could hurt him, I'd want them to speak up." "What did you find?" She pointed to a clause buried in the middle of page 7. "This language here, it's unusual. Most lifetime tenancy agreements have specific protections for the grantor. That's you. But this one has a provision allowing the new owners to terminate your tenancy if they determine the property requires significant renovation, or if your continued residence poses an undue burden on the property's marketability. In English, your sons can kick you out whenever they want, Mr. Reynolds. And there's more." She flipped to another page. "See this section? You've waived all rights to any proceeds from the sale of the property. Even though you're still listed as having lifetime tenancy, if they sell it, you get nothing." The conference room suddenly felt smaller. "There's something else," Jennifer continued, her voice dropping. "After you left on Friday, your son David came back. Said he forgot to get a copy. While I was making the copies, I overheard him on the phone in the lobby. He was talking to someone about getting the old man moved out by spring, and something about a place in Gresham for $500,000, plenty of profit left over. My hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of the table. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing, Jennifer said. So I did some research. There's a senior living facility in Gresham. It's not. Mr. Reynolds, it's not a nice place. It's one of those Medicaid facilities. Basic care. And the buy-in is about $450,000. The math was brutally simple. Sell my house for $2 million. Stick me in a facility for $500,000. Pocket $1.5 million. Split it 2 ways. $750,000 each. I could lose my license for telling you this, Jennifer said, but I couldn't sleep last night thinking about it. I think you should talk to a lawyer before your sons know we've spoken. And Mr. Reynolds, don't sign anything else. I drove home in a daze. The Pearl District streets I'd watched transform over 3 decades looked alien. I pulled into my driveway. Would I still be able to call it mine? And sat in the car, staring at the house. Margaret's rose garden, the deck I'd rebuilt 5 years ago, the kitchen remodel we'd done for our 30th anniversary. My phone rang. David. Hey, Dad. Just checking in. How are you doing? I almost confronted him right there. Almost asked him what the hell he thought he was doing. But something made me hesitate. I'm fine, David. Just got back from some errands. Great, great. Hey, Mike and I were thinking we'd come by for dinner tomorrow night. Maybe we can talk about getting the house listed with a management company. You know, for when you decide you're ready to downsize. Downsize. The word felt like a slap. Sure, David. Tomorrow night. I hung up and sat in my car for another 20 minutes. Then I called my neighbor, Frank Morrison. Frank's 72, retired cop, lives 2 doors down. We'd been friends since he and his wife Helen moved in 15 years ago. Frank, I need your help with something. An hour later, Frank was sitting in my kitchen, listening to everything. Jesus, Howard, he said when I finished. Your own kids? I need to know for sure. Jennifer could have misheard. Maybe there's an explanation. Frank shook his head. You know there isn't, but you're right. You need proof, especially if you're going to fight this legally. He thought for a moment. I still have some equipment from my security consulting days. Small cameras, voice-activated recorders. We can set them up. See what your boys say when they think you can't hear them. That night, we installed 3 tiny cameras and 2 audio recorders. 1 camera in the kitchen, aimed at the dining table, 1 in the living room, 1 in the hallway. The audio recorders were voice-activated, hidden in the den and the kitchen. I feel like I'm spying on my own children, I said, as Frank showed me how to access the recordings on my iPad. Howard, they literally stole your house. You're protecting yourself. The next evening, David and Michael arrived at 6. Christine came with David, dressed like she was going to a country club, not her father-in-law's house. They brought wine, expensive wine. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd made pot roast, Margaret's recipe. We sat around the table I'd built in my garage 20 years ago, and I watched my sons like I was seeing them for the first time. David did most of the talking. Dad, we've been looking into care options for you. Not now, not for a while, but eventually, just so we're prepared. I don't need care. I'm fine. Of course you are. Christine jumped in, her voice dripping with that condescending sweetness. But David and I worry. This house is so big. So much maintenance. The stairs. What if you fell? I've lived here for 32 years. I know every inch of this house. Michael leaned forward. Dad, we're not saying anything has to happen now. We found this great community. Very affordable. Beautiful grounds. We thought maybe we could schedule a tour. In Gresham? The table went quiet. Michael and David exchanged a glance. How did you know that? David asked slowly. I'd made a mistake. You mentioned it before. Maybe. No, David said, his voice harder now. We didn't. Who have you been talking to? The rest of dinner was tense. They left early. As soon as their cars pulled away, I checked the recordings. I almost wish I hadn't. The camera had caught them perfectly. After I'd excused myself to get dessert from the kitchen, They'd stayed at the table. Michael had leaned in. He knows something. How the hell does he know about Gresham? Calm down, David had said. He doesn't know anything. He's just confused. Mom's death affected him more than we thought. Maybe we should move faster, Christine had added. The market's good right now. We could list it next week, get him moved out before he makes trouble. We need to be careful, David had responded. If he fights the transfer, it could tie things up for months. We need him compliant. I'll talk to James about getting a medical evaluation. If we can establish diminished capacity. That's brilliant, Michael had interrupted. If he's deemed incompetent, we can make all the decisions. Hell, we might even get power of attorney. My own sons, plotting to declare me mentally incompetent so they could steal my home and warehouse me in some cheap facility. I watched the recording 3 times, making sure I hadn't misunderstood. Then I copied it to a flash drive. Then I called a lawyer. Eleanor Matthews had been Margaret's attorney when she set up her estate. She was tough, mid-50s, with a reputation for not taking crap from anyone. Howard, I'm going to be honest with you, she said after reviewing everything in her office the next morning. This is bad. They got you to sign over the deed, and that document is legal unless we can prove fraud or undue influence. But these recordings are dynamite. They show clear intent to defraud you, and the planning to have you declared incompetent is going to piss off a judge. Can we reverse the transfer? We can try. I'll file an emergency motion arguing fraud and financial elder abuse. The recordings will help. But Howard, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. These are your sons. Once we file, there's no going back. I thought about Margaret, about the life we'd built, about the house we'd filled with memories. File it. There's one more thing, Eleanor said. You're not safe in that house. If your sons realize you're onto them, if they think you might fight back. Howard, you heard them talk about having you declared incompetent. Desperate people do dangerous things. Frank and Helen insisted I stay with them. I packed a bag that afternoon, told my sons I was visiting an old friend from work for a few days. David had sounded relieved on the phone. The recordings from the next few days were chilling. With me gone, David and Michael had let their guard down completely. They'd met at my house, their house, as David kept calling it, to plan. We need to move fast, Michael's voice on the recording. Get him in that facility by March. List the property in April. Close by June. Split the money and be done with this. What about his stuff? Christine's voice. All of Mom's things? Estate sale. Donate what doesn't sell. He won't need any of it where he's going. Margaret's things. Her books, her china, her photographs. Just stuff to be sold off. I still think we should check on the power of attorney angle. David again. If Dr. Morrison could evaluate him, find some cognitive decline. Dad's sharp, Michael had said. Morrison won't find anything. Then we make sure Morrison finds something. He owes me a favor. A small one, but enough. They were talking about bribing a doctor to falsify a mental evaluation. My sons were willing to destroy my reputation, my autonomy, my life, for money. Eleanor filed our motion on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, all hell broke loose. David called 17 times. Michael called 9 times. I ignored them all. Finally, a text from David. Dad, we need to talk. There's been a huge misunderstanding. Please call me. Eleanor had advised me not to engage. Let them sweat. Let them wonder what you know. We have a hearing in 3 days. The hearing was in a courthouse I'd driven past 1,000 times but never entered. Eleanor had prepared me. But nothing really prepares you to sit across from your own children in a courtroom. David and Michael had hired their own attorney, a slick-looking guy named Peterson, who kept using words like misunderstanding and misinterpretation. But then, Eleanor played the recordings. The judge was a woman in her early 60s named Patricia Chen. She listened to every word. Her face got harder with each minute of recording. When it finished, she looked at David and Michael with something close to disgust. Counselor, she addressed Peterson. Does your client wish to contest the authenticity of these recordings? Peterson looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. No, Your Honor. Mr. David Reynolds, Mr. Michael Reynolds, approached the bench. My sons stood. David's face was red. Michael looked like he might be sick. Judge Chen didn't raise her voice, but her words cut through the courtroom. I have sat on this bench for 14 years. I have seen a lot of ugly things. But watching two grown men plot to defraud their own father, to have him falsely declared incompetent, to steal his home and warehouse him in a substandard facility so they can pocket the profit, that ranks among the most morally repugnant things I have witnessed. She turned to me. Mr. Reynolds, I am nullifying the deed transfer. The property reverts to your name immediately. I am also issuing a restraining order prohibiting these two men from coming within 500 feet of you or your property. And gentlemen, she looked back at David and Michael, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal prosecution for financial elder abuse and fraud. David started to speak. Your Honor, you never meant to get caught, Judge Chen interrupted. You absolutely meant to do exactly what you were recorded planning to do. Get out of my courtroom. The DA did prosecute. David and Michael both pleaded guilty to attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. David lost his securities license. Michael lost his job when the conviction became public. They both had to pay restitution, not that I wanted their money, and served 2 years of probation with mandatory community service at a senior center. Judge Chen's idea. She thought it might teach them something about the people they'd been willing to victimize. I haven't spoken to either of them since the sentencing. Christine filed for divorce from David 3 months later. Can't blame her for that, though I suspect the lost money bothered her more than the morality of what he'd done. Frank Morrison helped me change all my locks. Jennifer Chen, no relation to the judge, we'd joked about that, helped me set up a proper estate plan, one reviewed by 3 different attorneys. The house goes to charity when I die, a foundation that helps seniors fight financial abuse. Seemed fitting. It's been 8 months since the hearing. I still live in the house Margaret and I built. Her roses are blooming again. I had coffee with Frank and Helen this morning on the deck. I've joined a support group for seniors who've dealt with financial abuse from family members. There are more of us than you'd think. Sometimes I stand in the kitchen, in Margaret's kitchen, and think about my sons. I think about the boys who used to play in that backyard, who I taught to ride bikes on this street, who cried at their mother's funeral. I think about who they became and wonder where I failed as a father. But mostly, I think about the warning signs I ignored. The way David always seemed to calculate the value of things. The way Michael would get angry when Margaret bought herself something nice. The distance that grew after they realized there would be no more handouts, no more bailouts, no more parental bank account to raid. Eleanor told me something after the hearing. She said, Howard, you didn't fail as a father. You succeeded. You raised them with love and support. What they chose to do with that foundation, the people they chose to become, that's on them. I'm trying to believe that. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in a house full of memories. But I'm not lonely. I have Frank and Helen. I have my support group. I have my garden and my books and my freedom. I have my home. The house David and Michael tried to steal isn't just worth $2 million. It's worth every memory Margaret and I made here, every holiday, every ordinary Tuesday evening, every moment of the life we built together. They thought they could take that and reduce it to a dollar figure, to profit and loss, to how much they could get and how little they could give in return. They were wrong. Some things are worth more than money, dignity, self-respect, the right to live in your own home, surrounded by memories of the person you loved most in the world. I learned that the hard way. I learned it from my own children's betrayal, but I learned it nonetheless. And every morning, when I wake up in the bedroom Margaret and I shared for 32 years, when I make coffee in the kitchen she designed, when I watch the sun rise over the garden she planted, I'm grateful. Grateful that Jennifer Chen made that call. Grateful that Frank Morrison helped me find the truth. Grateful that Judge Chen saw through the lies. Grateful that Eleanor Matthews fought for me. Grateful that I'm still here. This is my home. I built it with Margaret. And I'll stay here, surrounded by everything we created together, for as long as I'm able. That's not stubbornness. That's not spite. That's love. And unlike my sons, I know the difference.